Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Tim.
And this is Chris.
This is Adam.
And today, instead of giving our hot take review of a game we just finished playing, we're going to give our hot take review of around 22 games we played over the weekend at TimCon.
Quite the weekend.
That's a lot of games.
I'm still recovering, not just mentally, but physically. I feel like my brain used parts of my nervous system that haven't been exercised ever.
We were pretty rough on ourselves this weekend, maybe a little too hardcore, a little too long. Probably could have cut that a day shorter and would have been better on us. But
Or a couple nights shorter, maybe.
Well, you guys got there before I did even. And when I got there on Friday night, it was like 5 minutes in, shook everybody's hand, said hi, and we sat down and started playing a game. And I think for the rest of the weekend, other than, a few hours of sleep a night, and I mean a few hours of sleep a night, and maybe even meals, we didn't necessarily go away from the table for real long, and we went out to dinner one night. Other than that, it was pretty much 24/7 games. I mean, game, 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 game.
I think we said this in April, Tim, like if we ever did this again, we'd take it a little easier on ourselves. And that is not what we did here at all.
I wish we'd have taken it easy one night at least. When we did it back in April and I said that I thought we needed to take a break, I thought it was because we learned too many new games at one time. But I knew most of the games this weekend and it still was rough. It's challenging. Anyway, so for our listeners, in case you don't know what TimCon is, way back in like last June, all separated from COVID, doing this podcast and started talking about when we could get together again in person. And Adam named it, hey, TimCon. So we've been planning this for a while, finally, set up some dates and booked our flights, and we made it out this last weekend. In any case, for how exhausted we were, we still had an awesome time, played lots of great games, and we're going to talk about all those today, kind of go through some of them we played before, so we may just briefly tell you if we have any new thoughts on it. Some of them are going to be new games to us. Because we're going to be covering so many, we won't be going into a lot of the rules or anything like that. We'll just kind of jump right into the games themselves. Any other thoughts before we jump in and start talking, guys?
No, let's do it.
All right. So yeah, Steve and Adam and I all got there at about the same time. Palm Springs, California. Steve flew in from Portland. Adam drove in from Long Beach, and I drove in from Phoenix. We got there about 1 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, grabbed a quick lunch, picked up some groceries, and got our first game on the table. And the first game we started with was Glen 2, Chronicles by Matthias Kramer. And I actually just talked about this game, gave a little bit of a description on our last episode. So if you're interested in hearing more about it, you can go back there. But Adam, this was your first time playing. What do you think?
Well, this is a game I've been looking forward to playing for a long time now. We finally got to play it, and it lived up to it. I thought it was great. The mechanics were nice. It was relatively quick. You take your action, grab a tile, put it out, expand your city, or grab a face of one of the people and put that in your stash, and then you get to usually put your little token out on the map there and kind of explore out. I thought it was great. I thought the different strategies were cool. I think Steve was going with make his city, his little village huge, and I was trying to keep mine small, intentionally small, realizing that you guys would get a bunch of big negative points for that, and almost pulled it off. I think I was in a couple of points. I think we were all within a few points of each other in the end. I was within a couple of points of Steve after the big subtraction. I thought I had it in the bag, but he was still a few points ahead after his super bonus points. So I had a good time playing it. I'm glad you showed it to us.
Yeah, this has been fun for me the last couple plays. This was no different. It was pretty easy to teach. We got right in and started playing quickly. I got crushed. You guys killed me at it, but I had a fun time. So I still love the scoring mechanisms where you're basically scoring against the other players. It's fun to try to keep up with that and play around with the market that's in there. And still having a good time with this. I want to explore some of the Chronicles in it pretty soon, though. I think
that'd be fun. Yeah, you can see what else is in there. It looks like there's plenty of room for expansion material, new stuff, new little twists.
Yeah, exactly. So next thing we did is played a game of Infinity Shards.
Shards of Infinity?
Yeah, Shards of Infinity. I'm actually just following my Twitter feed for the weekend along here, and I typed Infinity Shards. Oops.
I would like someone to explain that to me. How can one have a shard of infinity? I'm not entirely clear on that.
Well, you see, infinity is actually a finite thing, Chris.
Oh, man. Muy philosophical.
The designers here are Gary Arant and Justin Gary. The artist is Aaron Nakahara. Publisher here is Stoneblade Entertainment. And Chris, I think you'd like this one. It's a lot like Star Realms or any of the Realms games that are out there. It's a deck builder with some twists. It has a little reveal mechanic. Instead of putting if you were talking Star Realms here, analogies, instead of putting a base out on the board, you have a little shield card in your hand and someone says, I attack you with 3. And you're like, Booyah Shaka, I got a shield of 8. You don't do any damage to me. And then you subsequently play that hand out on the table, and then typically that shield guy gets just passed back on into your discard pile. So it's basically Star Realms with a few twists. We played it at 3, which I've never played a deck builder like this, a straight deck builder, at more than 2. So, Tim, what were your thoughts on Shards?
Yeah, it was a pretty fun little game. It is a lot like Star Realms. It does two things differently. One is that it's got another resource type that as you play certain cards, you can add this one resource type and it creates a threshold. So some of the cards will have a threshold that say if you're over 5 of this one resource type, then you get an extra benefit, or if you're over 10. And the reason why it's called Shards of Infinity is because all the decks start with one card that if you get to 20, I think it's 20 or 30,
30, so if you get to
30
30.
of this resource, you just do infinity damage. So you basically just win the game if you can get up to 30 of this threshold. So it's another resource to balance versus just life. I like that. I think that's a clever mechanism to it. It definitely had some interesting combos going the way, just like the colors in Star Realms, each of these colors kind of have their own strategy. One kind of gains more life. The one that Adam played, he ended up playing this one card when the three of us played where he dropped it and it did damage from like 8 different cards in his discard pile. Like basically just comboed all this stuff together by having the right cards in his discard. So it's cool to see that strategy play out. I think my only challenge with it was that, like, compared to Star Realms, where Star Realms is mostly just these 3 icons and a couple simple add-on mechanisms, these cards had a lot more text on them. It wasn't a big problem at all, but it's kind of the same thing that Hero Realms did for me, which is it kind of slowed down what otherwise would be just a very quick dump your hand out, like make one decision and move on. It just slowed it down a little bit. So I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as Star Realms on a first play.
Steve and I explored the 2-player a little bit, and we did work our way up to 30 one time, and we're trying to get to that mechanic. That was kind of neat to see that happen. And also one thing I like about this is this is Chris's favorite strategy. Get the suit that makes other people discard all their cards. They don't have any of that in Shards of Infinity. So sorry, Chris, you can't make me discard my hand 5 times in a row and then destroy me.
There's nothing more rewarding in a game of Star Realms than making someone discard like 4 or 5 of their cards, and there's nothing more frustrating and crazy making than someone doing
exactly.
that to you. Hey, question. What did you guys think of the art in this game? I just took a couple quick glances at it, and I thought it looked really cool.
I wanted to make sure I mentioned the artist's name because the art is pretty cool. I guess there is some sort of time travel theme here. I didn't really read much into it, but the art is all fantastic. It's kind of science fiction-y, but combined with a little bit of fantasy stuff. So I think it's really neat. I had a good time looking at the cards, and the flavor text is also pretty fun to read some of that too. So
I don't remember the art at all, so it was a long weekend though. That's probably the only reason why. And by the way, that was Glenmore 2 was Adam's pick. The way we picked games through the weekend was just we round robin. We just took turns picking games. So I'll fill you in a little bit on what we're picking, and also once we get to the championship phase, we'll keep you updated on the score as we're going through these games. The third game that we played on Thursday, and this was my pick, and this is Gaia Project by Capstone Games now, I guess, right now publishes it. But Gaia Project's one of my favorite games. Chris hates it, so I wanted to get it out of the way before he got there. And we played a 3-player game of it. It'd been over a year since I played it, so it took a few minutes. We got in and got it set up and started playing pretty quickly, but it took a few minutes to remember kind of what the strategies were and actually start
right.
anything really effective. What did you think of this, Adam? You played it a few times in the past, but how do you like this play?
I'm glad we hit it early on because my brain was still somewhat fresh. Early rounds, it just feels like frustrating. You can't do too much stuff, but then you might start to find some combos and work your way up and do some things that get you a few points here and there and that make your turn a little longer and more satisfying. It was that heavyweight Euro that it proclaims to be. Interested to see what Chris's take would be on this now that he seems to be shifting towards the resource management sensibilities.
Yeah, I don't disagree on that. I wonder if Chris might like this a little bit more, especially based on what he says about some of the other games coming up than he did a year ago.
Right.
Yeah, I had a fun time with it. I'm excited to get back to it soon. I'll probably bust it out for solo soon if I can't get someone else to play it with, because I remembered why I liked it so much, and it took half the game to really get into the groove of it. So now I want to get back in before I forget too much about how to play it.
How long between games of this one? It seemed like you were a little rusty.
Yeah, it's been over a year. I think I played a solo game before I moved to Phoenix, and that was over a year ago. So,
okay.
And it's probably been 8 months. Last time I played with you guys was probably a year and a half ago or something like that, and that's my last previous play. So
it's interesting to see what games kind of stick and the strategy comes right back. Yeah. It goes away. You feel rusty. You feel like you have to knock off some of the rust to get back into the groove of some of these games. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and then the last game we played of the evening was High Society by Rainer Knizia. This was Adam's second pick of the weekend. High Society is a light kind of bluffing card game, bidding card game. Adam finally got to play it. What do you think?
I thought it was amazing. I had such a great time playing this game. I wanted to make sure to get it out and play it. So yeah, there's just a deck of, I don't know, maybe 15 cards, maybe not that many cards, and everybody has their denominations of cash. I think we counted $106 per player in different denominations. I think 1 through 5, and then like a 8, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 25 or something like that. So as you're spending these money, if you win the bid, that money gets cleared off and you don't have it available to you anymore. And you're bidding for these different cards. Most of them are just 1 through 9, I think it is. And there's a card that halves your total value by the end of the game. There's another card that doubles. I think there's 2 or 3 cards that doubles. And then there's another card that takes away one of your cards that you've already won. Or if you get it first, it takes away the next card that you gain. So that was interesting to see the order in which these cards come out, how that would affect your strategy. For instance, I liked going for that card that was a negative. It wasn't such a bad thing to get that right off the bat, because then you can bid for the low cards, the 1 and the 2. And those other players would almost have to bid higher because they know they want you to waste that on some like an 8 or a 9. So it just gets really interesting, the bidding versus the type of cards that are in your hand already and that you know that are left in the deck or that have already shown themselves. So I thought it was just fascinating, all the choices that came out of a 15 card deck. What did you think of it?
Yeah, this game was so challenging because the 7 comes up and you're like, well, that's not that high, but I need to get some points here. So I kind of start to bid it up, and then Adam bids a little bit higher, and you need some points, and so you end up using these because each of the money is in a different denomination. Maybe you try to use up the 10 and the 5 early, just to not have too high of a bid, but that means you don't have those bids to just slightly outbid somebody on another bid. So it's really challenging which numbers you play. And it just felt like every single game I would just try to take a couple cards to get some points, but then I'd run out of cards, so I couldn't not bid. Like I'd get stuck with one of the negative points, or the cards that like gave me half or subtracted from my previous game or whatever. So it always ended up killing me. It was so tight. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great time. We played like 3 or 4 games of it, I think.
Yeah, we knocked out 3 or 4 in a row. The big trick that we haven't mentioned here is that whoever bids the most money throughout the course of the game
Loses.
Can't win.
That's right.
So no matter, yeah, so you can kind of, Tim only has his 20 and 25 left. If I force him to use that, he's in a pickle because he has to spend the most money, or he's not going to have enough points to win. So you can really work yourself into a corner if you're not careful and if the other players are paying attention to what denominations you think they have left. It was just interesting.
Yeah, it really was. Hey, Chris, you got a chance to play one hand of this at like 4 a.m. on Saturday. Do you remember anything about it? And what did you think of your favorite designer's card game?
Yeah, one of the themes of this weekend was I don't like Reiner Knizia games. And yeah, I actually almost don't remember playing that. It was that late at night. We had a few drinks. It was, I think I hated it. I think I said so kind of rudely and then went to bed, which I apologize for if I did do that. But I can't comment on it in any meaningful way. I'm sure I must not have liked it.
All right, no worries. So we did crash at that point, got up the next morning. Chris was going to be coming in at like 5 p.m. on Friday night. So we still had a few more games to play before Chris got here. So Steve's first pick of the weekend was Cubitos by John D. Clare. We recorded a podcast episode on it back a few months ago. I had owned it already and felt like it was okay, but it wasn't really exciting to me. Steve bought it right away. Adam, you seemed to really like it on that first play. How'd the second play go for you?
Second play was just okay. I don't know why. It lost a little bit of luster. It was fine, racing around, rolling these huge chunks of dice. I exploited this little thing and snuck in and got all these dice before. I think it was legal. I used the cats to get more cats, and I just took all the cats. So I had cats in the green dice and the red dice that let me roll unlimited green and white dice, I think. So I was rolling 20 dice at a time by the time you guys were rolling, I don't know, 9 or 10 dice at a time. So I got that going and then raced around the track, and it was okay. I don't know. It was okay.
Yeah, you had that huge combo, and it seemed almost like it was cheating, but you only beat me by like 5 spaces on the track too, because I had an early start and I took one of the shortcuts. The one thing I thought was fun of it, this being like my 3rd or 4th play, is that I think this is the first time I played with a new card set, or maybe the second time. But the cards really changed up what the dice did, and so that at least was fun. It was worth exploring. The board was different this time around, but it didn't really change my feelings on it. I'm not going to keep this in my collection. I found it to be, it's just a little bit fiddly dealing with all those dice and making sure you get the right dice in the right spaces and stuff like that. But it also just doesn't feel that exciting. You are racing, but there's nothing really exciting about the race at all. You can't block other people, so other than just getting to the end of the track, it's not really like you're racing to beat anything at all, and it just builds up so slowly. It's just not an engine builder for me, and I generally really like engine builders, and I like John D. Clare's other designs that I've played. So this one fell a little flat with me. I'm gonna move it out of my collection.
Yeah.
The next game was my pick, and this is a game that I've heard about for years. I've always wanted to play, and that is Dominant Species, published by GMT Games. If you don't know what this game is, just really briefly, it's a big area control game. You are one species on the planet, and you are trying to survive, and you're trying to take over the most area on the planet and have the most control of it. And it mostly does that by a series of worker placement spaces, which are really interesting because the worker placement spaces, you take turns placing your markers, but then you take them off the board from top, left to right, and then going down. So where you place and when you put your marker there really matters, because if you place in a space that, for example, tells you that you're going to eat other animals, you want to make sure that you're actually going to be in a place where you can take advantage of that, and other people have a chance to move in and maybe take those spaces away from you. There's also a way to purchase cards that create events in the game, and the events can cause big effects. And so at the end of the round, everyone plays these event cards, and they can wipe off all the species off a piece of the map, or you can put glaciers on the map and cover over tiles. Thematically, really interesting what it was doing here. So, Adam, you haven't played this for a little while. What do you think? A 3-player game with us? How'd it go for you?
Yeah, it's a pretty chaotic game, is what everybody says. I made sure to tell you guys, hey, these events can cause crazy stuff. You don't want to put too many guys out there until this catastrophe tile happens. That can wipe all your guys out of the game. So I was trying to give you some warning, and it definitely favors those who have played it, more. I feel like you guys hung in there. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty interesting. Again, it was fun to play it with some gamers who have been around the block. I really enjoyed it. I thought it moved at a relatively brisk pace. This game can run really, really long if you're not careful. I thought 3 was a nice count to play it at, and I enjoyed it. I had a really good time playing it. I like the way you manipulate the food sources at the little, I don't know, apices, the little apex of the hexagons, and the way the glaciation can wipe those out. I don't know. I had a good time. What about you, Tim? This is your first time playing it, correct?
Yeah, it was, and probably my last time playing it. I liked it. I mean, I think it does some really cool things with worker placement and the way that you interact with the area control. The game is ugly as hell. It's a GMT game, so it's not the worst of theirs, because at least you have these colorful, kind of the geography tiles on the board, like your forests and oceans and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Wanderlust tiles.
Yeah, and then the whole board is just gonna, by the end it looks kind of cool because it's got all these different colored tiles out there and just these food markers and colored cubes and cones spread everywhere. But the production was nothing to write home about, so that probably dings it a little bit. But I think the bigger complaint for me is that it is pretty chaotic. You can make important decisions, and obviously you're working your way up and doing these different strategies, and we all kind of worked on different strategies, and nobody really fell that far behind. I thought we all hung in there. I was running in pretty bad shape towards the end, but then I ended up kind of starting to pick up all those tundra tiles and got the bonus for all those points.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting stuff, but it's a long, fairly heavy game where ultimately you're making these decisions. A lot of it's just going to get wiped out, whether it's by the next player's decision or by an event card that happens. And interesting, fun. I'm glad I finally got a chance to play it, but it's probably not a game I need to go back to. If somebody was like, yeah, I really want to get this game played, I'll jump into it. That'd be fine, but I wouldn't ask for it.
Let me go back to the production for a second, because you just talked about that, Tim, and said it was kind of an ugly game. And I'm looking at a picture of it here, and it looks like there's a bunch of cubes and some cones. And what does that represent? What is that supposed to be?
Yeah, so the cubes represent the quantity of animals in your species, and so it's each color is a different species, and then the cones represent if you've got dominance in that region, and dominance matters for a couple different reasons. Like it matters, so it's a visual indicator basically.
The way it scores end of each round, if your action pawn is in a dominance space, you pick the tile you want to score. That goes by the number of species in that tile, and then whoever has dominance in that tile gets to execute or at least they get the option to execute the dominance card. And that's kind of the timer for the game. Once that dominance deck runs out, then the game's over.
But I did like the worker placement mechanism and kind of all those different choices laid out over on the side. And you're always rushing in because the different animals, like your animal had different food sources that it could consume, and that's marked on your player board. But then you could also evolve your animal. So one of the worker placement spaces you could take is you could evolve it and put other food sources, types of food that they could eat. And so where they ended up and how much food of the types that they could eat was there kind of indicated whether they were dominant or not. But also, if there was no food for them at the end of the round, then they'd go extinct off that tile and they'd get wiped out because they couldn't survive. It was a big push and pull, and all the worker placement spaces were different things like, picking where, which food is going to go out on the tile or when new tiles go out. And it was interesting choices for sure. I just felt like we played for a few hours, and I'm not sure how much of what I did mattered too much. But it's like any area control game to me. It's like you see the person is kind of in the lead, and then you make every effort you can to go after and stop that person. And that is just not, that's never fun for me. It's never fun for me that it's like, Tim, slow down, don't try your best, because people are gonna see you're trying your best and doing well, and they're gonna stop you. And there's the theme of that coming on. You'll see that came up in another game this weekend. For me, like, that kind of takes away a little bit of what is cool about a Euro game, is that you get to make these choices that are impactful and build up your engine and improve your game. Here, it just didn't feel like I had much control. So it's a me thing.
That sounds pretty frustrating.
Chris, I don't think you would have liked this game, to be honest, but Steve really liked it. And we all had a good time playing it. Steve was talking about all weekend. Like,
Wow.
he thought it was an awesome game.
Yeah, Steve had a great time playing it.
Yeah.
I like one of the mechanisms I like is that from round to round, it does have a little bit of memory. If you don't choose to adapt, or if some adaptation little foods are in them, they'll slide down, and there's potential for that to get removed off your little species food choice that he can eat. And same thing with I think it's abundance or something that goes out on the board. If nobody picks one of those, it'll kind of slide down and slide down again. They'll become detrimental if nobody picks them or prevents that from hurting the board. So just from round to round, a little bit of memory is kind of cool with the little foods sliding down.
Yeah. All right, cool. So that was Dominant Species. So the next game we had, which was Adam's pick, and this is a game I'd never heard of before, a game called Bridges of Shangri-La. And this is a pretty interesting abstract game where you have a bunch of regions on the board that are all separated by bridges. And then there's like 7 different symbols represented in each of those regions of the board. And each player has a bunch of tiles that match those symbols in their color. And basically what you're going to do is you're either going to play one of those tiles out on the board, which is supposed to represent a master, or you're going to put 2 tiles on top of masters, which are supposed to represent students, or you're going to move students from one tile or from one area to another area. When you do that, everybody's students move over there. And if there's more of the students that move than ones in the matching tiles that they replace, it knocks it out. So it's a little bit of an abstract area majority type of situation. I'll just jump into this since this was my first time being introduced to it. I thought it was clever. It was pretty fun. We played once through, and then about halfway through, like, oh, now I see what I should have been doing here. So we immediately ran it back and we played a second time. Yeah, I had a good time with it, but it is an abstract game. So the art on it is pretty cool. It's like all these cliff dwellings separated by cliff roads with bridges going over them. And the bridges are little wooden bridges. So that looks pretty neat. But what's weird is that all the art that represents the symbols, to me, it all feels like Dr. Seuss art. Even though it's not like musical type of characters or anything like that. It's just the way they're drawn. They don't really fit to me with the boards. That was a little strange, but otherwise, it was a fun abstract. What do you think, Adam?
So not like Dr. Seussical in a good way.
I mean, I don't know. It definitely made it feel a little quirky. I just didn't think it really fit with the board.
It feels a little retro. Yeah, the tiles are kind of a mismatch with the board, and it does feel a little retro because it is a little retro. It's a 2003 game. It's not that retro, but kind of retro. Players are kind of incentivizing with each other. So a shared incentive in a common space. It's a term the Dads on the Map guys like to use over on their podcast. That's where I heard about this game. So it'd been sitting here, and I wanted to get it on the table and see how it played. I thought it was interesting. I started to see some opportunities where I could gain some quick points or lock out a region. Hey, if I move these guys over here, this bridge will break. This little territory will be isolated, and I'll have 3 guys, and the other guy will have only 1 guy there. So I'll take that. That seems like a win in my book. So you look for small opportunities like that, or little opportunities where you can gain points and get a little majority in one of these little mountain towns. Are you guys familiar with Shangri-La, where that comes from, the book?
Very generally.
So it's one of my favorite books. It's called Lost Horizons. I forget the name of the author. Intelligent, smooth writing style, probably characteristic of the era, or that Atlantic. You can picture that. I think that was that accent. Oh, here comes the guys, and here they are. This totally fake accent that had origins from nowhere. But the book is very smooth and clever, and they made a movie out of it too. So the history of that book is just interesting. It was in everybody's back pocket. You know, it was originally written in these little paperback things. It was just huge, the huge book of its time. The movie was fantastic as well, an old black and white film. Lost Horizon, again, was the name of the book where Shangri-La was first mentioned, as far as I know.
Yeah, that just going back to the, and the book sounds interesting. I actually want to check that out. Going back to the game a little bit, one of the things I didn't mention, Adam touched on, is that if you move your pieces into another area, then the bridge that you just passed over goes away. Adam's got a couple of students in there, so I better add some so that, because that way when he moves to take over another region, I'm coming with him and I'll get the benefit of it as well. So it was very interactive. You were not playing your own game here. You had to kind of watch what everyone else was doing and ride along with them. So definitely had some interesting things going on. Very unique to me. I hadn't really played anything that felt like it before. Worth taking a look at if you like abstracts. All right, so the next game we played, and this was right before Chris was going to get there, so we wanted to get something light in, and Steve picked Kabuto Sumo, which is designed by Tony Miller. And this is a game that Adam talked about recently on one of our episodes, but it's basically kind of like a coin pushing game that's a game. And so you basically have these wooden pieces that are out on this board, and you each got a bug meeple in the middle, and you're trying to push pieces off from off the side of the tile onto the board and knock the other guy's pieces off. I had a fun time with this. We played like 3 games in a row. I think it's one of the only games I won all weekend, so maybe that helped with it. But I thought it was clever. We played 3 players. It always seemed like a tight challenge to be accidentally pushing myself off the board, you know, when I was trying to push somebody else off. And you could upgrade your player component. Like each of them had special abilities. And so you could end up upgrading and getting a better piece to it. And that was fun to play around with. I don't know. It was a light, quick game. It didn't overstay its welcome. I've heard some complaints about that, and I didn't feel that way at all. I think we played every game in like 8 to 10 minutes or something like that. And I was happy to go back to it a few times. What about you, Adam? You've now had it for a little bit. What do you think playing with some gamers?
I don't know. It's okay. It's losing momentum for me, I guess I'd say. I had fun with it. It's perfect for what it is. You're just trying to push bugs around. I played this game with Sarah a few times, and she'll like try to break it down. She's like, "Oh, this if I do this, this circle's gonna spin this way, and then it's gonna hit my wrestler's foot, and that's gonna hit this antler mechanism, and that's gonna spin this, and it's gonna pop this over here, and pow. Wait. But if I come in from this, and then repeat that like 30 times, so Sarah's great, but for trying to analyze a little fun dexterity game like Kabuto Sumo, you know, it has its place every once in a while. If it's just me and her and we're not doing anything, that's fine. But I'm glad that you and Steve decided not to play this that way. Also, Tim, amazing job at this game. You were lethal with that stick. I think you were a stick bug, and you had this, I don't know, like 3-inch long stick that you were just pool cueing it up and pushing everybody all over the board with this thing. It was pretty amazing. Chris, have you looked at this one? Any interest in shoving bugs around a tree stump?
Well, I don't know now. I mean, when you first talked about it a couple weeks ago, I thought it sounded really interesting, and now you're sort of convincing me it wasn't that interesting. But I don't know. It looked really cool to me.
It's a novelty. It's fun for a few times for sure, and it's fun to show you guys and see what you thought about it.
Exactly. I mean, I wasn't dying to go back to it all weekend, so it probably wouldn't be something I picked, but I had a fun time with it on the table. And tactile. You know, you got all these big chunky pieces you're pushing and stuff. All right, well, now the main event was about to start because I went and picked Chris up at the airport, and finally all 4 of us were here. Not only did we get to start playing some 4-player games, but this also kicked off our championship tournament for the weekend. So we started scoring every game. We were going to keep track of wins and who was going to take home the trophy. And the trophy, by the way, was a big old home printed plastic meeple that had TimCon 2021 champion printed on it. That's what the big prize was. So listen in and you'll get to hear who won it. Chris, you picked the first game when you got there. What was your choice? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Tim texted me and said, "Hey, I'm coming to get you. The guys are getting ready to set up a game. What do you want to play?" And there wasn't 2 thoughts about that. It was the Expanse. I've been wanting to play this game. This is one that Adam had recommended to us. We actually had tried to do this on the show a few weeks back, a month or so ago, and we weren't able to because we couldn't find a good TTS mod for it, or we couldn't find any TTS mod for it. So we weren't able to play it. Plus, I've started watching the TV show. I'm now on, I think, near the end of season 2, and absolutely loving it. So I was dying to get into this game. So anyway, the Expanse board game, it's designed by Jeff Engelstein, published by Pendragon Games Studio and WizKids. And for anybody who's not familiar with it, it is a rather ugly but fun to play area control game. You play one of 4 factions who readers of the books or watchers of the show will be very familiar with, trying to control different parts of the solar system. There's some simple combat, and it's the mechanism, the basic mechanism of the game is that you have some basic actions you can take. You draw a card, and you can play a card for its points that allow you to do your basic actions, or you can play the card for a special ability, and essentially go until the end of the game where you try to control as much as you can, and you score based upon the characteristics of the areas that you control. So it was a really fun game. I'm glad we played it. I was sad at the production for this game because I feel like these days, this kind of production, there's really no excuse for it. I think somebody had made one of the comment in a text when we were texting back and forth about it, that it looks like a generic 1970s space board game, and I think that's true. But I did really enjoy the gameplay. So, what did you guys think, Adam? What about you?
Yeah, I'm glad you picked this one, Chris. I've been wanting to show this game to you guys for a while, not necessarily show you guys the components, but the gameplay itself is exciting to me. The way it's like a 4-player Twilight Struggle, if you want to look at it that way. Twilight Struggle Light, I would say. You got the action points, and they do the basic actions, like you said. And then it's cool if you use it for the action points, the card kind of goes up in priority order for the other factions that are eligible to use that event. So not only is the choice come down to using it for those action points, but do I want to let the next guys execute this event? So you have to read that event, and are they just going to wipe clean everything you just used the action points for? So there's 5 cards I think out there on that market row, and it becomes interesting. You're like, I want that event down the road, so I'm intentionally not going to buy it so that somebody else will buy it, and I'll get to do that event. You can kind of plan for that. There's also, you can keep one of the cards to execute during the scoring phase. So once somebody buys a scoring card, if they're set up in one of the bands of scoring, you either get to use the scoring card that you saved up, and maybe that'll help you out and get a few more points you can eke out during one of these 5 or 6 scoring phases that occur. So just a fun time. There's a lot of table talk is where we started to get with this one. Steve and I were I was Earth, he was Mars. I had this card that kind of held Mars hostage, and he just kept coming back and not letting me use it, not getting a position. So we were just taking each other out for, a solid round or two. And then I was like, dude, we need to end this and go out into space and get some points elsewhere. What do you say? So we kind of said, yeah, okay, let's end this shenanigans and go fight other people. And that ended up working out pretty well for both of us, but a little bit better for me. Tim, what do you think of the Expanse?
Yeah, and going on to that player interaction before I give my thoughts on it, the entire first, 5 turns of the game, Chris and I just kept going back and forth trying to take that proto molecule. And all we kept doing is tying up in that space and blowing up all our ships and blowing up all our influence. So I think that's why you guys got away with it, because we just get wiping ourselves out on that stupid proto molecule.
No, by the end of the game, were you guys out at influence cubes?
No, not quite, but we were getting there. We didn't realize early on that they actually got wiped out of the game completely. And we were only losing 1 or 2 each time. I mean, the scorings come so quickly here that you really only get 2 actions before a scoring gets triggered. So it's really brisk, really, runs really quickly. I think if you'd played it recently, Adam, and been able to teach it without checking the rule book, this would have been the quickest game to get into. But you did have to check the rule book on a couple things just because you hadn't played it in a little while. This game is so easy to get into. It's so streamlined. It's so easy to play. We talked recently about Fractal, and I was saying how cool it was that your actions could either be your basic actions or you could pull an action out of the board. And that's how this game worked too. But when you use your basic actions, then you basically gave the card to someone else to play. And that almost felt a little bit like Robotech Reconstruction. So just a few things that it reminded me of. But this game was awesome. I can't recommend it to anybody though, because this looks worse than bad production. This is not even just about mediocre quality or not great art or something like this. This literally, I've never seen anything this bad, I don't think, in a modern hobby board game. And it's just such a turnoff. I mean, we actually got to enjoy it a little bit because Adam took his big old Eclipse miniatures, all the Earthling miniatures, and we used those for our ships. So we at least had some cool, components to mess with. If we'd just been dealing with those little cardboard shits, I think, I don't know, I think I would have had to flip the table halfway through it. It was, I don't know. I don't want to be that shallow on it. The game is really great. It really is. And I loved it, and I would love to play it again. But just, watch out. What you're getting there is not going to be a good looking piece of, box of board game here. It's pretty bad. And it's hilarious too because Adam told me, well, with the expansion, they replaced the original map, to make it look nicer. And I was like, this cannot possibly be the upgraded version of it because it's still pretty bad. And the protomolecule that we were fighting over was a little standee that just had the words protomolecule printed on it. Really, really awful with kids. I don't know what you're thinking here. I don't know. I don't know who you're targeting with games that look like this. This is an excellent game. It should have gotten a better treatment, and I feel bad for Jeff Engelstein that this wasn't produced by somebody. I'm sure WizKids got the license to the Expanse is probably what happened. He got hired to make a game, and he made an awesome game here. Let's take this gameplay, throw a generic sci-fi theme on it, and give it a better treatment. I'd love to play it. It's a great game.
Let me give a variation on that. I think that's the theme is actually one of the things that might attract someone to this game. If you're a fan of the Expanse, you're going to look at these cards and you're going to recognize all the characters, and I got a kick out of that because I'm new into the show and really enjoying it, and so I enjoyed that part of it. And this reminds me in a small way of Robotech Reconstruction, in that it's definitely going to have a fan base because of the show, and the fans of the show are going to enjoy the art. I mean, the minimal art, the photographs of the characters, which are pretty crap. It's screen captures from the TV show, so pretty basic stuff. But you do appreciate that part of it, and the gameplay is solid enough that you can enjoy it. I think even if you're not a fan of the TV show, but you're going to be sitting there the whole time going, "This is a fun game," but dang, it looks bad.
Agreed, Chris. To piggyback on that a little bit, like, what if they just made them a few of these little miniatures? There's not that many ships in the game. If they made the Rocinante, if they made some of these stealth ships, if they made these Martian, flagships, that would have been so cool to make these, 3 or 4 ships per faction to have out there on the board. And maybe it would up the cost 20-30%, but I think that cost is going to be worth it. It's going to bring in more of the fans of the show, I think, and it's going to bring in people who aren't even fans of the show. If they see these like little cool spaceships, you get to fly, toys. Everybody wants to play with these little toys and stuff. You
Yep.
fly around in space. So, yeah, a little disappointing that they went with little cardboard circles. And the expansion actually upgrades the ship. They went with like rectangles instead of circles. So that was their upgraded ships in the expansion, which is just sad to see that.
Yeah. So just for the record, the Expanse, Adam won the game, and so he started off the weekend, the official scoring part of the weekend, strong with a big win on this game. And then we moved on to Tim's first pick.
Yeah, my first pick was actually also a birthday gift because when Chris showed up, he handed me a game and said happy birthday. My birthday was last Wednesday, so we were doing this a couple days later. And he handed me Cascadia, and we did a full review on Cascadia about a month and a half ago. So you can hear our full thoughts there, but it's a pretty simple game. You basically have some starting tiles that represent different types of landscape, like waters, mountains, prairies. And then each of the tiles that your starting tiles have little icons that represent different types of animals. And so what you're going to do every turn is you're going to go out to, there's a kind of a center draft of 4 tiles and 4 animal tokens. And you just pick a set, one of the tiles and one of the tokens, and bring them down. You attach the tile next to your board, and then you place a tile on any one of the tiles that has that related marker on it. That's as complicated as the game gets. What's really interesting about this game is that every game, the scoring conditions change. So you're always trying to score for the most attached landscape types, but each of the animal types has different scoring conditions, like what types of animals they want to be by, how many you want to see in a row, or what shape they want to be in, and things like that. And man, I love this game, and I know Chris got it because I've been talking about it a lot, and it just came to retail, so I was going to pick it up myself. But I was like, when he brought this out, this wasn't going to be my pick for the night, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is what we're playing right now. So we busted out, played a game of Cascadia, went really quickly. We probably played it in 45 minutes or something like that. And I had a great time with it. And the whole time we're playing it, I was racking my brain trying to think of what other game came out in 2021 that I played so far that I liked more than this, and I can't name one. So right now, this is my 2021 board game pick of the year. There's a lot of games we haven't played yet, but I think this game is fantastic, and I think it's going to get a lot of play with us. What do you guys think about this on your second plays?
I had fun with it. I said it in the review. It just feels like it's wide open. You can go whatever direction you want to go. I never felt restricted or confined. I felt like, hey, I can do this and put it somewhere that's going to help me in a beneficial way. I can't complain about this game one bit. Chris, how was your second play? I think it was your second play.
It was my second play, and I can't say enough good things about it. I mean, I bought a copy for myself, so I went to the local game store and picked up 2 copies. But the guy was like, "Yeah, you shopping for Christmas?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, no birthday." But I actually, as I tonight, I played my first game with my copy, the hard copy of Cascadia, and I played it with my wife, who's not a hardcore gamer, and my 10-year-old son. And with the teach, it took me less than an hour. Everybody had a really good time, and we had a good, solid game with actual, real, decent scoring. So I think this game has a lot of stuff going for it. It's nice art. Anybody who's played Calico, it's by I think a lot of the same folks by the same company. And personally, I like this one better. We talked a little bit about that in our episode, but between those two, they're similar games. I like this one better. I like the theme. I like the nature aspect of it, and I love this game.
Yeah, and I haven't had a chance to introduce it to my family yet, but my daughter just turned 10. But it's gonna be my first choice when we get to play games, probably this weekend or next weekend, and I think they're gonna love it. I think my wife's gonna love it. I think my daughter's gonna love it, and yeah, I think it's gonna be a big hit for us. So I think this game's gonna get played a whole lot, and I definitely recommend it. It's a fun game. It doesn't feel like a light filler abstract to me. It feels like a full game, but it's quick and easy to teach. I like it. By the way, that was designed by Randy Flynn. And Adam, I think that was your second win of the weekend, right? For the big championship.
Right. I was out to an early lead. I was feeling good about the meeple. I was gonna take it home with me at this point. I was like, I got this thing in the bag. It's over.
He was starting to feel like the Empire, and we were like these little rebels kind of running around going, okay, what are we going to do about this?
That's right. The next pick was mine, and I saw this big, gigantic box of Martian awesomeness, and I couldn't resist Terraforming Mars. That's by Stronghold Game and Jacob Frixilius. This game, if you don't know about it, we've talked about it a bunch of time. I think it was our first or second review that we did for the podcast. This is a game. It's a resource management game. Oh, and an engine building game. It's awesome because you're trying to terraform the planet Mars, make it green, make it habitable. And you do this by a draft of cards. There's all these different patents, and they come out in the form of playing cards. And you get set up, you get your initial patents, and then from those, you're playing them out there, out in your tableau, and you're building this engine. Every round, you get 4 more cards. Do you want to buy them or not? You pick one you want to keep. Pass 3 to the left, you get 3 from the right. And from those 3, again, you keep one of them that you might want to buy, pass the other 2 to the left. Or you maybe see that the person to your left really, really needs this card, so you're just going to keep that one instead so that they can't get it. Decide which one of those you want to buy, and repeat that on and on and on, 2 actions per turn until the planet's terraformed. There's 9 oceans. You have to get the oxygen up to, I think, I don't know, 8% or something like that, and you have to get the temperature up to 2 or 4 degrees, 8 degrees Celsius, something like that. And this game was fantastic. It's one of my favorites. One of the first games that got me into modern board gaming. The highlight for me of this game was Steve sitting next to me being like, ugh, Tara, I hate this game. Oh, I can't do anything. And I look over and he's got like 7 Jovian Jupiter tags on these cards. And I'm like, Steve, you know there's a couple of cards in the game that give you 1 point per Jupiter tag. You need to get those, dude. And he's like, whatever. And then end of the game comes, he gets like 3 more Jupiter tags, and all he needed was 1 of the 1 per Jovian tag. And he's counting up this, moving his tracker up. And Chris is sitting there in the lead, and boom, leapfrogs him by 1 stinking point to take home the victory. So I thought that was a pretty fun ending to this game. Chris, what do you think?
This is one of my top 5 games. It might be my number 1 game. I kind of vacillate on that, but it's just such a great game. And we were playing it with the big box, with the new pieces, the new hex tiles that go on the board that came out recently, and it's just always a joy to play this. The game is, I mean, I've played it enough now that it's a complicated game, but I can jump right into it. It was fun playing it with you guys. I have rarely played a 4-player game of it. I think even when we did our review, I'm not sure if we had 4 players, if it was 3, but I've played it a bunch of times, 2 players, a couple times 3 players, and so this was it was a bit of a treat getting it on the table for this. And I gotta say, that moment when we got to the end scoring and Steve jumped me by 1 point, and this is like my game. I love this game. It's my jam. And Steve was complaining the whole time, and then comes in and drops the bomb on me for that 1 point. I was so irritated. So irritated.
There was a couple games. There was another game like that. I'll give a little tease, but it happened a couple of times, Chris.
Yes, it did.
Tim, what are your thoughts over there?
This was such a great play, this game. I always loved this game, and this one was probably one of my favorite plays of it. We all, because of the way the cards come out and the engines get built, everyone ends up with completely different strategies, and we're going for different things. And it looked like Adam had a nice lead going in there. He's like whipping ahead of us on the TR track. Me and Chris are about even. Steve's way down at the bottom. And then we get to end game scoring, and we're scoring everything up. And I think I snuck right up to Adam. I was like 1 point away from him. And then Chris jumps right over Adam, a few points away. And then that's when Steve took the lead. So we all end up within like 5 points of each other, even though we had completely different strategies going on. Different milestones and awards were taken. Adam didn't happen to have any scoring points in his hand, which is how I think the rest of us caught up with him. But it's a blast. And honestly, I think out of all the games we played this weekend, I think this was my favorite play. And I think it might have pushed into my number one game of all time as well. Not that it hasn't always been one of my favorites, but it just reminded me, especially playing it among so many other games and so many of my favorite games, that this is the one that I would love to just go back to anytime, because it always just feels like a different game.
I agree. We played here with the Prelude expansion and the Colonies expansion, which I think might be my favorite way to play. The Prelude kickstarts everything, so those first 2 rounds aren't kind of laggy. You can actually get going and get cities and get stuff out on the board, and you can, you get some nice titanium production, nice steel production. You can start buying stuff, happens right away. It gets rid of those, shortens the game by 1 or 2 rounds, but I don't think it takes anything away from the game. And then the Colonies is nice. You can see like, oh, there's $10 in Luna. Well, I'm just going to pay whatever, $9. I got 2 colonies. And I can up it one. I can pay $9 to get $17. Or you can go out to Triton and you can do the same thing and get all this titanium from Triton, I think it is. So just some nice options, having that little colonies market out there. It's fantastic.
So let me be a slight contrarian here and say I love Prelude for all the reasons that you just said, Adam, but I don't entirely dig the Colonies expansion. It feels like a little bit of unnecessary complication to me. I mean, this is a game that's already got a million things happening in it. This is not a game that needs additional complexity to it. I personally don't think Colonies adds a whole lot, but I also don't dislike it. So I would just say my perfect version of this game would be what we did minus Colonies.
Minus colonies, sure. And I think the Colonies is, you totally don't need it. But for me, I like having a little market. But I get it, Chris. Yeah, you totally don't need it at all.
Yeah, first of all, Prelude's so much fun. It's always great to just have something to start with and kind of asymmetric. Everyone's starting with something different. Colonies I like. It's not necessary at all, but I enjoy it. I'm glad it was in this game. It was fun to do the market with 4 different people. But it just kind of, it doesn't get used a whole ton. There's a little bit of a race for it. It's fun to watch those little markets build up and grab them. But it adds another little element that I like. I still want to play with the most recent expansion.
The Turmoil, I've never used a Turmoil at all.
Yeah, that looks fun to me. So I'd like to give that one a shot at some point. But this was an awesome play. Had a great time with it and want to play this forever.
So Steve won this one, and so he ended the night, 'cause this was our last game of the night, and he ended it on a high note. We knew the next day he was going to be the first one to pick a game. So I think Adam, with the big lead there, was starting to get a little bit nervous that, Steve got some momentum and he's got a game coming, his game pick. And so with that, we went to bed on Friday night.
So first thing, Saturday morning, got up, made some eggs and potatoes and had a nice breakfast, and jumped into Steve's first pick, which was Aquatica, which is published by Arcane Wonders and Cosmodrome. And we've talked about this. We had a review of this at our 1-year anniversary episode. So what do you guys think of this play? We actually played with the expansion as well, which added a few more cards into the market and also changed up the way that the end game scoring happens. But what do you guys think about Aquatica?
I really enjoy this game. I don't know. This is one of those games where I don't know if I played it 10 times, but I still feel the same way about it, or I start getting a little bit tired of it. But after 2 plays now, our review play and then the play that we did at TimCon, I absolutely love it. In fact, this is one of the games that I came away from the weekend going, yeah, maybe I ought to pick this one up. The art is really cool. The mechanisms are really neat. For those who haven't played this game before or listened to our review of it, the basic mechanism of the game is that it's a deck builder, and you're trying to conquer locations. You're trying to build up your hand, and you're trying to score the locations that you conquer. And the mechanism that's really neat about it is, as you get these locations, you slot them into this board, this tableau that you have in your hand, and there's a series of descending or ascending, however you want to call it, benefits of that location. And you get to use them, and as you do, you slide the card up into this little slot, and eventually you get to the bottom where it now becomes eligible for scoring, and some even give you an additional benefit. And you go through this round after round until you run out of cards, and as with many games, you add up the points at the end and you're done. But the art is cool, the game is a ton of fun, the production is really neat. Like, I really like the slotting on the player boards is really cool. The one thing that I would say about it that I kind of feel mediocre about was the expansion. It gave you some what they call tribes that could give you some continual scoring throughout the game rather than some individual scoring goals that came in the original game. And that felt like it. Maybe it was good, maybe it wasn't good. Didn't feel strongly one way or the other. But I did walk away thinking about what a great game this was. So what did you guys think? I mean, after your first play, this is our second play. Did you feel as positive about it on second play as you did on the first?
I think this game started to click for me a little more on a second play, and I feel like I understood it a little better. It kind of has that Concordia hand management thing where you can add more cards to your hand. At some point, you play another card that lets you pick all your cards back up. So, like you were saying, Chris, you want to set your locations up so that they're eligible for scoring by the time you play those cards that let you do the scoring. Or some of those locations might let you score on a card that's already eligible. So there's a little engine building element to it, and being able to time these things all correctly so that they slot up perfectly, and that's kind of neat, being able to find and solve that little puzzle. But I don't know, like it's okay. It's kind of fun. It doesn't get me too jazzed about anything. The player interaction piece, there isn't that much there. I wasn't really watching what anybody else was doing. It's kind of that parallel play a little bit rather than interactive play. So everything you said, I can't disagree with. The production's awesome, and the art's fantastic, and the little slotting thing is just cool. But it doesn't get me too pumped up to play. What about you, Tim?
First, I want to mention the expansion. I think what's really important about it is it does add more cards to the ocean deck, because those got a little stale on the first play, and this time they did feel fresh. It felt like we were getting a good variety coming up there, and I think that's really important here. As far as the tribes go in the scoring, I thought that was a clever mechanism, and maybe we didn't use them very well this time. We didn't really, kind of take advantage of them until late in the game, so we probably didn't get the benefits. I don't think it's necessary, though. The main game, the scoring there works pretty well. It's a fun race to those different scoring opportunities. And here, I don't know if that's what slowed the game down, because in this one, it doesn't end until one of the decks is empty. But that's my biggest complaint about it right now. We were joking all weekend long that this simple little engine builder took us 2 hours to play. It was one of our longer plays of the weekend, and it doesn't make any sense that it would have been. So to me, it dragged a little. And I think at 4 players, like Adam said, there's just not enough interaction to keep you busy while other people are taking their turns. Turns shouldn't be that long, but sometimes there are some interesting decisions. You got to chain off things. You got to do them in the right order. And so someone would take 5 minutes taking their turn, and you don't really care what they're doing. So this is probably a really fun game at 2 players. I don't think I'd want to play it at 3 or 4. I wouldn't recommend it at that point. But I think the mechanisms are great, and the production here is just awesome. I like seeing it in person. The board art is fantastic. The ocean card art, especially, those were all great. The little player boards are fun to interact with and play with. So I think this is a great and interesting engine builder. I'd recommend it at 2 players, and I'd recommend it. I think it's a lot of fun. But just moved a little slow at 4 players for sure. Chris, I think you ended up winning that one too. So you got on the board. It was 2 for Adam, 1 for Chris, and 1 for Steve at that point. I still had a big old goose egg, and that was going to be the trend that continued through most of the weekend. But did I turn it around? We'll have to see.
And so there we were, still chasing Adam. But by the way, before I launch into the next game, which was my next pick, I want to comment on one thing that was a highlight of the weekend for me. And that is Adam's cooking. Adam is an amazing cook. I love the food that he made. It is absolutely delicious. And it didn't occur to me until we started talking tonight, but I think, Adam, we had actually met face to face maybe twice before we started. COVID happened, and then everybody stopped seeing each other face to face. I think we had played once at maybe once at Tim's house, once at my house, and then once I stopped over to like drop something off, that kind of thing. And so this is like by a factor of 100, the longest we'd ever spent together. And so it was a great time hanging out with. It was a great time with hanging out with everybody, but it was in particular I had not really spent any time face to face with Adam, so that was a lot of fun. And his cooking is great. If you ever happen to meet him, ask him to make you some German pancakes, and you'll be in for a treat.
Thanks, Chris.
No, thank you. So the next game we played was my next pick, and that was Eclipse, Second Dawn for the Galaxy by...
Good luck saying this name, man.
Yeah, I know. And actually, I was looking at his page on BGG, and it actually says a guy with a name you can't possibly pronounce. Tuco Takokalio. I'm going to guess, and I could be just dead ass wrong about that, but that's what it looks like. And this is a game that we had played many times. I mean, we've had probably 3 or 4 game nights at least in the last year that we've picked this game. Everybody really likes this, particularly those of us who are area control fans. And Tim kind of has a skeptical look on his face, so maybe Tim's a little bit, maybe not quite as enthusiastic about it as the rest of us. But I thought, this is a game that we could get into. Maybe I could, pick up another win, keep my momentum going. For those who haven't played it, this is a 4X game, tile laying, area control, building big ships, moving them around the board, exploring, with a couple of mechanisms that are particularly interesting. The most notable of which, I think, is the technology track, so to speak, on your ships, where you build up your ships over time by researching technologies. You can then install them in your vessels and send them out into combat. So the game is generally, from my experience, a long series of turns with people exploring, getting their resources built up, using those resources to upgrade their ships, and then a big epic battle in the last turn or two. And then the game ends, and there's some hurt feelings usually. So now that we finally had a chance to sit down and play this game face to face with the actual top-notch components, what did you guys think about it? Adam, it's your game. How did you feel getting this on the table with us at TimCon?
Yeah, so even though I've had this for 2 years or something, 2.5 years, it really was. I played it like once with my dad, and sometimes I just break it open and play 3 or 4-handed solo because I love it so much. But getting to be able to play this with 4 other real people at the table and having all that kind of interaction, and hey, look out for this, and checking the board game state and seeing what's Chris gonna do, what are these plant guys gonna do over here on this side of me, what's Steve gonna do, is he gonna come after me, are we gonna kind of make an easy peace here and not go after each other too much. I absolutely loved this game, coming off the tails of Voidfall and Fractal. Like, this made me not care about those. This is the 4X game. By the way, 4X, Sarah brought this up to me. She's like, you guys keep saying 4X, what the heck does that mean? So the X's are explore. That's when you're going out and looking at these different tiles that you could put in these different sectors. Expand, you're going to go out and colonize, maybe potentially some other planets. Exploit, you're going to go to those planets and mine them for money or science or materials. And then, like you alluded to, Chris, you're going to use that to either build ships or research technology. And then finally, exterminate. So you're going after either a neutral party and just going to exterminate them, get some points and see what kind of discovery they're hiding, or you're going to try to exterminate your neighbors and take out their ships and take some points from them and generate points for yourself.
So Adam, not to be fussy, but shouldn't that make it 4E?
Yeah, right? Well, it's 4EX, 4X.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah, there you go, Chris.
Got me. You got me.
So again, I had a blast playing this game. Tim, what did you think of this game?
Screw this game. It's terrible. No, I'm kidding. I'm actually really kidding here, because I actually think this is a great game. It's a lot of fun. The opposite of what Adam said, after playing this game again, Voidfall is definitely the 4X game for me. So let me tell you about the arc of this game here, right? So we're all playing our asymmetric factions, and early on, I make an alliance with Chris, and I kind of like quarantine myself off so that there's only one entryway into my or two entryways into my entire planet. But I got that all blocked off with these big old star bases that are huge on defense. They can heal themselves. They're almost impossible to kill. And I'm just doing my own thing, spreading out, working my resources, really playing the game the best I can. And we get up to about the 6th round, and then Chris goes, guys, Tim's going to run away with this game. And this is right after Steve and Chris, or sorry, Adam said that. And this is right after Steve and Chris get into this big battle. Steve takes all of Chris's stuff. Chris is stuck there. Like, he needed to go and explore into Steve's territory, which was wide open. But Chris and Steve just instead talked them into, and by the way, I'll just remind you that I have a big old goose egg on the championship charts at this point. I haven't won a single game. But they talk Chris into coming after me in this game. Chris takes all of his ships, throws them all at my star bases. They were very evenly matched. Everyone's like, oh, this is going to be an epic battle. We'll see if one of them makes it out alive on this. Maybe nobody does. Chris rolls all hits. I roll 0 hits. All my guys get wiped off in one stupid battle. My entire territory is wide open for exploiting at this point, and the game was over for me. That sucks, guys. That was just miserable. That said, I had a fun time with it. After I got over the hurt feelings, around later, I was working my way back up, doing the best I could, and I still enjoyed the game. But holy cow, that was frustrating. What could I have done? You know what? I probably could have, spent another couple turns building up more star bases and building up more defense in that one territory. I don't know. That's not my type of game. That's all I can say. But if you like this type of game, it's a fun game. It's got a lot going for it. I don't know why in these games why I bother like doing my best, because all it ever does is gets me run down by everybody at the end. So I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't understand the draw. I guess that's it.
Let me just say for the record that notwithstanding everything that Tim just said, he came in second in the game. So there's that for one. But second, a very close second.
A very close second. Like he was so far in the lead. Here's the thing, Tim. We talked about this, and I just want the listeners to know that you put a giant target on your back. You could have been a little more discreet. Like you said, you could have not advertised how much in the lead you are with. You had 2 monoliths out there. I think you had 3 out there. I don't even know. So that's 9.
I had 2 at that point, but I was about to build another one on.
I think that's like 9, or you could have had up to 12 points in monoliths because you were crushing it so hard. So I see these monoliths, and the plant guys get 1 extra point per territory anyway. So I'm thinking like, dude, Tim's up around 45 with the potential for upwards of 50 points. I'm like, guys, nobody has a chance unless we concentrate our efforts here on Tim, because there was just a giant target there, unavoidable. So Chris made the bold move, the most lopsided die roll I've seen in the history of die rolls, like kill to nothing. I was like, oh, Tim's going to hate this game. He's going to hate me forever for having this game. That was just the unluckiest die roll I've ever seen. I like that the trader thing was in play, that Chris took the trader, and then Steve eventually ended up with the trader thing. So we were all backstabbing each other for that point grab at the end. And man, the arc is usually very similar, but you know what? I love the arc here so much. It pulls it off so well that I can't get enough of Eclipse.
I have to admit that this game that we played, that particular game, was, I think, for me, a turning point where I can finally understand and appreciate something that Tim has been saying since we've been playing games together. And it's that whole thing about, it's no fun when anybody's got hurt feelings. And I mean, we're all good friends, right? And we're all in this for the games. We're all in this for the experience. None of us, we're not that competitive. I mean, we're competitive and we like to win. But there's just something about that experience when you go into combat, you roll a few dice, your buddies start teaming up on you, and they wipe you out with a few dice rolls. I mean, I can totally get that. I get that in that experience. Even this whole time, we're playing, everybody's rolling around, laughing. It's great time. Then a couple of those happen, and things get kind of awkward for a few minutes, and there's kind of
it got quiet at the table. It got quiet my jaw dropped when I saw that die roll. I was like, and that's unbelievable.
And the bottom line is, I get why that can be not fun. And I feel that, and I appreciate what Tim had to say about that. And I think I appreciate it in a way that I hadn't before. And so I think that for anybody who's listening to this and is familiar with these type of games is going to know what I mean by that, and is going to know that scenario that comes up. So just so you know, this is the kind of game where that comes up in a big ass way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Adam was successful at talking Chris into kamikazing me, and Adam walked away with the win on this Eclipse game.
He did.
So, big epic experience. It had to be played. This has been a favorite of our group for a while, and Adam had the big old huge Second Dawn production with everything upgraded in the neoprene mat, and this game also took the award for barely fitting on the game table this weekend. It like literally was like milliseconds. We had all the components all on the edges of the neoprene mat because it wouldn't even fit around it in any way.
And we had to bring in the little server cart too for the science tray and the tech tray.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. We did.
And for anybody keeping score, that's 3 wins for Adam at this point.
Yeah.
3 wins. That's a lot of wins.
And no wins for Tim.
Again, my confidence was building. I thought I had the momentum, and I was ready just to sign that golden meeple with my name, champion 2021.
So after Eclipse, we wanted to head out, grab an early dinner. Chris wanted to hit one of the famous tiki bars in Palm Springs, and so we decided to get out, beat the crowd a little bit, and just have a quick dinner and a couple drinks over at a local tiki bar. So we went downtown, did that, came back. It was probably like, I don't know, 9 o'clock or something like that by the time we got back and settled in. And my next pick was Scythe by Stonemaier Games, and Jamie Stegmaier is the designer on this. And I was so excited. Was this my pick? I think it was my pick. Yeah.
It was, yeah.
I think it was your pick. You were like, all right, we're doing Scythe. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was so excited to get this played.
Let me ask you this, Tim. Was this pick in any way motivated by you to get on the board for scoring, or was it just because you wanted to play the game?
I think I just wanted to play the game. In fact, the only reason I picked this over, there was a couple other games that I was more excited to play this weekend, and we'll get to those soon. But they were going to take a little bit longer and be a heavier teach, and at that point, we'd all had a couple of drinks. So I thought it'd be better to just play something that was, that was fun. So I was never motivated. My choices were never motivated by the score this weekend. But I was excited to get this played. We busted out with the modular board, which I don't think any of you guys have played with. Maybe Chris, you have before. And then we also played with basically a draft of all the factions. And what else? Any other modules? I don't remember. Let me just say this about Scythe. Like, Scythe is a popular game. Most people know how to play it. If you're not familiar with it, it's an engine builder. There's a big map in the middle, and you're trying to spread out around this map. As you're spreading out, you can get other resources. In a way, it's kind of like a 4X light game, but set in a 1920s alternate universe where you got these big mechs. And then each player has a asymmetric player board. Take one of 4 actions on this player board, and each action does something. Maybe it produces goods, maybe it lets you move around the board, etc. But this game, here's what I'm going to say about it. Okay, a couple things. First of all, played with the modular board. I love it. I love that experience. It completely changes the game. Everybody started in a completely different way. Some of the factions had full access to the factory right away, so there was movement and like attacking out into the board right away. We also played with the extra encounters deck, and those encounters are all crazy. Like, they don't stick with the standard formula of the encounters in the base game. The base game, every encounter does something very similar. There's a positive light reward, there's a medium, a little bit heavier reward, and then there's a negative, that's a word that gives you negative popularity, but is the strongest. With this new encounters deck, and I've just got it shuffled into the main one, some of the effects are just crazy and wild, and all this nutso stuff is happening. So the game just felt like this big, awesome, epic experience. Every turn felt like something big was happening. People were moving out. The factory changed hands like 4 times. Big events were happening. What stood out to me is that we've been reviewing games for a year now, and I probably played 200 different games this year, and nothing feels like Scythe to me. Like, sitting there and playing that experience, I didn't feel like, oh yeah, this is pulling from this, or it's pulling from this, or this gives me the same feel as this other game. It felt completely unique, and I had a great time doing it. I did terrible at it. Like, I don't think I ever left my peninsula until like almost the last round of the game. You guys all had like 5 stars, and I think I had 1 star by the end of the game by the time someone got their 6. I wasn't doing what I needed to be doing, but I was having a blast doing it, and I was having a blast watching you guys do your stuff. I was just working towards my little goals that didn't pay off for me, but it was so much fun. It was great. I've got the metal mechs in there, and they all have these bright colored rubber bases on them, and then all the components. So you got this big, cool looking board with these bright colors scattered all over the place, these oranges and aquas, and Oh man, it was so much fun and such a blast to play with these components. What did you guys think about it? Because this has always been one of my favorite games. Adam, why don't I start with you? Because I don't think you've been really hot on Scythe in the past, but what do you think?
Yeah, I was a little trepidatious going into this. I've tinkered with Scythe in the past, and I thought it was okay. Sometimes I feel like I can't do much. I feel like I'm a little restricted. Having those metal mechs and just the beauty of the game just drew me in right from the offset. And I was like, Tim's got these crazy factions. I don't know what these factions do. He told me to be this orange pumpkin guy looking faction, so I was like, okay, I'll do that. And it turned out this was like the most badass faction that's out there in the game. They've got these tokens. Tim's like, you get to be mean and do all this stuff that you like to do. I was like, well, that's not true, is it? Yeah, it's kind of true. Okay, I'll be this faction. And he said, you better get rid of all these tokens. So I was looking for targets of opportunity, and Tim had these 4 little innocent little worker guys sitting there just harvesting wheat or chopping wood or whatever they're doing. And one of my things was I get to drop a token bomb on someone for every guy that I forced to run away back home if I'm the aggressor. So I jump my mech right over there with this little hop skip ability, scare these 4 guys. And here's a handful of tokens for you, Tim. You told me to do that early, so I'm just following your advice. So that was kind of cool. And then a couple other combats I got lucky in. I think Tim tried to do a revenge combat on me, and I had like 3 5 cards. I got to play all these. I could play as many cards as I wanted to, as long as they were the same face value. So
There's like no way he can beat me in this, and he drops 3 5s in one combat.
and then later on, I drew like 2 more. I don't know how many 5s are in the deck, but I kept getting all the 5s, so that was probably making everybody angry. I had such a great time playing this game, and I never had that experience that I had with this time. It was epic. It was rum infused. It was fun. It was very table chatty. It was a lot of trash talking going on. Chris, what'd you think of this play, Scythe?
It's not very often that I get truly bitter about a loss, but this was one of them. And just for the record, this is another one. This is Adam's like, what, I don't know, 20th win, it feels like at this point. But this is a game where the whole game, I was like kind of the guy to beat. And I'm trucking along. And for those who haven't played the game before, you're trying to meet 6 goals. When somebody meets 6 goals, then the game ends, triggers the end game, and then you kind of add up all the points. But generally speaking, the person who gets the most goals met at the end is the person who wins. And we got to the end. I triggered the end game because I had all 6 of my goals met. The closest I think might have been 4 after that. So like it didn't even occur to me that I could possibly have lost this game. And then Adam's just like, ding, 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 moving up the track. And how many did you beat by 1 point? Was it 1 point, Adam?
It was a $1.1.
It was $1. He beat me on money. He had coin. He had 1 extra coin, or could have been anything. It could have been the 1 extra of those little stupid little tokens that he put on me. But if you've ever been in that situation where you're just like, oh yeah, I absolutely know I won this game. You get to the end, you get to the scoring, and you're like, yeah, I still know I won this game, and then find out, oh crap, I didn't win this game. So. Anyway,
the reaction to this was epic. You're like, what? What? It was like an immediate in your head. I could say like, I demand a recount, and I don't blame you. I don't know how I won this game. I didn't think money was worth anything in this game, but apparently it was. I kept getting money from the bot. I had my enlists all out early, so in this game, if you do your enlist action, you get to leech points off your neighbors. And a lot of my enlist actions were get me more money, or I think I got to get like $3 every time somebody built a mech, or so I had some pretty powerful enlist powers if I was doing them right. I hope I was doing them right. And I just had, I don't know, $20-$25 before we went into that final scoring, and then so that was what put me over the top for sure.
Yeah, and in fact, that's one of the things I really like about the scoring in this game is that it can seem like there's a clear leader when you look at those stars up at the top, but it really comes down to where people's popularity is, and then the territories they have out, and money adds into it as well. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of ways to win, but there's actually a lot of opportunities to pick up different scoring, and that end game scoring can often lead to that, where it's just like, oh, I've got a clear lead here, and then you just fall short.
That's actually that reminded me of something. Not only was I 2 goals ahead of all you guys, I was at least one track up on you guys on the popularity.
The popularity.
I was. So I was like, yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna stop now because otherwise I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the last picture that was taken that night, and I see Adam's big old tall mech standing on top of the factory in the middle. So he probably also got a little bit of a boost by having those extra territory points there.
I had a bunch of territory. I had the factory. I had my territories were all like spread out all over the place. So I got a bunch of territory points. I remember a little extra for the factory and a bunch of money in my hand. So it worked out.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I won't go too much more into everything else that happened that night, other than there was a hot tub and a little more high society at about 4 a.m. And then we had a slow start the next morning. So, all right. So we went into the next morning. The scores: Adam's sitting at 4 points, Chris is at 1, Steve's at 1, and I'm sitting at 0 points. So it's not looking good for the rest of us. It kind of feels like Adam's got this all locked up, and Adam gets the next pick. He picks smartphoning.
So we're going to split the TimCon recap episode into 2. This will end part 1. Will I keep my lead, or will a contender come from behind and snatch the golden meeple from my clutches? If that teaser doesn't get you excited to come back next week, I don't blame you.
If you'd like to chat with us on social media, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Otherwise, you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. And looking forward to chatting with you all. Until next week, take care, everybody.
Later, guys.
Bye-bye.